With all of Super Wildcard Weekend now having been played, there is a lot to discuss, and we are going to cover every game in today's video. We are going to discuss several things to take away, how each team performed, and what each team can take away from their postseason loss, or, if they were fortunate enough, what they can take away moving forward. There are 6 full games to discuss, so we do have a lot to cover, so before we get started, please like the video and subscribe to the channel, as each only take a second to do, and it would be very much appreciated. Now let's begin. And we're going to start with the first game that was played on Saturday for today's video, which of course was the Colts and Bills. Now before the postseason started, we had discussed the Colts in depth, and I had said they would be a very tough out. A team that can run the ball and play solid defense is always a tough out in January, especially when having to play in Buffalo and other cold temperature places. And Indy proved to be exactly that, a tough out. We had also come to the conclusion before the playoffs started, once we saw the seedings play out and where everybody would be going, that this was an extremely tough draw for Indy. An 11-5 7-seeded team may never happen again in the history of this format, and then to draw a juggernaut of an offense that had lost only once since the middle of October, and by the way on a Hail Mary at that, was the toughest luck Indy could have had. And there were several times that Indy could have threw in the towel, like when Rodrigo Blankenship missed a field goal and Buffalo responded by having a huge time-consuming drive that culminated in a touchdown. That is the type of drive coaches say breaks the other team's will. Or when they went down 27-16 in the middle of the fourth quarter. Anyways, Indy lived up to what they were perceived as, which was a hard out in the postseason. This isn't a usual outlook going forward because of the uncertainty at the quarterback position with Phillip Rivers. But with players like Jonathan Taylor, Michael Pittman, Big Q at guard, Julian Blackmon, and Darius Leonard, if they get a quarterback, whoever Frank Reich's next guy is, they will be in a great position moving forward. And now for Buffalo. So Josh Allen played a good game, but it wasn't anything over the top from him like we saw during the 2020 season. And don't take this as slander or criticism because remember, I did say he had a good game. But there were some Josh Allen moments where he makes plays only he can make, like the shot put first touchdown he had, and then there's plays where he gets himself in situations that only he can get himself in. But good for Buffalo for winning their first playoff game since the 90s, and the NFL's leading receiver Stephon Diggs, not surprisingly, stepped up in the playoffs. There were certainly times where Buffalo looked out, or at the very least down with not a lot to look up to. For a while they were getting outcoached, as CBS flashed a graphic that their average starting position at one point was their own 7-yard line. And whether your team is the first ranked offense or 32nd, whenever you're starting that backed up in your own territory, you are not going to be successful more often than not. Now you may have a drive here and there, but over the course of the game, that is not the recipe for success. But Buffalo did overcome that, and as we said, Indy was one of the tougher opponents they could have faced for an opening playoff game. And going forward, I do think they got the opening round jitters out, and they themselves will be tough going forward. And it's going to be incredibly hard for anyone to go into Buffalo and beat them. And the Buffalo KC AFC Championship game many predicted is still intact. And now heading to the Rams-Seahawks game, and there is a lot to cover here. So for as much as a defensive battle as this was, the score does not do it justice. None of the 3 quarterbacks looked good, and this can be viewed as the game Cam Akers broke out. He had a great game a few weeks ago, but on the road in the playoffs, with everything on the line, is a much different situation, and he lived up to it on Saturday. The Rams defense was phenomenal against Seattle, and they made Russell Wilson uncomfortable all day long. They will go to Green Bay next week, and with an all-world corner in Jalen Ramsey going up against Devontae Adams, this is going to be a very good matchup and one that will be heavily discussed this week. If the Rams get down early though, I have a hard time seeing them come back against this Packers team, given what their current situation is offensively. They did not play great offensively against Seattle, and if Jared Goff or John Wolford would need to lead a comeback against them down multiple scores in Lambeau in January, well, simply put, I wouldn't have the confidence in them to do that. But great defensive game from the Rams, and they clearly made Russ uncomfortable all day, and Russell Wilson is now 1-4 in his last 5 postseason games. Now for the Seahawks, there's really no other way to describe this game than disappointing. Russell Wilson was not good, and Seahawks receivers not named DK Metcalf finished Saturday's game with a combined 6 catches for 78 yards. Russ had just 11 completions, with 5 of those going to DK, and to say Seattle didn't play good would be an understatement. Russ is 1-4 in his last 5 postseason games now, as we said, and the whole let Russ cook was, of course, getting blown up on Twitter and every other social media. And a few weeks ago, I said the Seahawks were done because I didn't like the way Russ had been playing as of late, and I really didn't like the Seahawks moving forward, and I was told I didn't know football, and I never watched football in my life, so to say this was a little satisfying to see, well, that would be an understatement. Anyways, the Rams can win in Green Bay, as they have to handle Devontae Adams and not get down double digits. If they get down by 10 or more, then it's over, because I don't think they have the offensive firepower to keep up with the well-rested Packers. Next is the Bucs football team game that took place Saturday night. So congratulations to Washington for keeping this game close with quarterback Taylor Heineke and having to go up against the GOAT and Tom Brady. The Bucs were expected to win, and they did, but there's a lot to look forward to if you're a football team fan. They took it to the final minute against the best quarterback of all time's team and were a division champion. They have a great defensive line, a good offensive line, and a good young receiver in Terry McLaurin. There was legitimate reason to think they would have competed heading into the game against the Bucs with their defense and more specifically their pass rush, but winning was something else. They have a lot to look forward to in the near future with people in their organization like Ron Rivera, Chase Young, and of course Terry McLaurin. And as for the Bucs, they will travel to New Orleans next Sunday, and what has to be said for them is it is incredibly difficult to beat a team 3 times in 1 year. The Saints absolutely killed them on Sunday night back in November, but do not expect them to do that again in the playoffs with the Bucs season on the line, because it will not happen. Now, could the Saints beat Tampa Bay next week? Yes. I'm not saying they won't, I'm just saying do not expect another 35-point blowout. But both of the games the Bucs have played against the Saints have not been good, as both were double-digit losses for Tampa. Good for Drew and the Saints to beat Tampa twice, but it would be incredibly fitting for Tom and the career narrative for him to lose both regular seasons against them and ultimately to get the last laugh with a win in the playoffs. Next is the Ravens-Titans game, and this was a game the Ravens wanted to win more than anything. Of course, a Super Bowl is the ultimate goal, but with the Titans dancing on their logo in Week 11, the postseason last year, and Derrick Henry, this meant the world to them. So congrats to Lamar for getting the monkey off his back and getting his first career playoff win. But going to Buffalo next week certainly is not an easy task in itself, as we have seen how good Buffalo is. And this game between the Ravens and Bills will be a matchup between two very hot teams, and as a football fan, I think I speak for all of us when I say we are all looking forward to it. The Titans still have a lot to look forward to though in 2021 and beyond. The teams in their division, let's take a quick look. The Texans are a train wreck. The Jags, even though they're getting Trevor Lawrence, they won't be serious contenders in 2021, and the Colts may not be serious threats either, depending on how their quarterback situation plays out. So barring anything crazy, the Titans should win the division and be back in the playoffs again next year. But things certainly change between being the big underdog story like they were a year ago and increased expectations this year. They have great key pieces moving forward on the offense with Tannehill, of course the 2,000-yard Derrick Henry, and A.J. Brown. But those guys can only do so much, and the Titans need a pass rush in the worst way. Now is the Bears-Saints game, and this will be by far the shortest recap of any game. So congrats to the Saints for winning, but this game was incredibly boring. Also, cool for the NFL to do the Nickelodeon slime and everything like that, because there were some cool things and features with that. But this game may have been the worst one to do it with the Bears' solid defense and just not good offense they have. Obviously, the NFL couldn't do it with the Browns-Steelers being the Sunday at 8 o'clock game, but in the same sense, it just wasn't a good game to use for what they were trying to do, which was bring a youth fan group into the NFL. 21-9 looks a lot more pretty than what the game actually showed, and this game went pretty much as it was expected. A great team in the Saints beat a wildcard team and advanced to the divisional round of the playoffs. And last is the Browns-Steelers game. So first, congratulations to the Browns for their first playoff win this century, and of course Browns fans. The first quarter last night was the culmination of 18 years of frustration and anger being taken out on the biggest division rival in their stadium, and honestly, good for Cleveland, great for Cleveland. For what they've been through for the past 2 decades, they deserve this. Now, do I think they can go to Kansas City and win? No, I don't. But last night, and I would imagine because I'm not a Browns fan, but I would imagine that peak last night made the years of suffering almost worth it. And if you're a Browns fan, comment on this please whether it was or was not. But anything that could have gone wrong for the Steelers did go wrong, especially in the first half. Now, there was a little bit of time during the second half where everyone was on edge, but the Browns ultimately prevailed. Also, I do want to say Mike Tomlin made a very poor decision to not go for it at the start of the fourth quarter when they had the momentum and they were on the verge of making it a 35-30 game. I don't agree with that decision to punt at all, and that should be viewed as the downfall to their comeback efforts. Moving forward for Pittsburgh, and things are hairy looking ahead. What's the quarterback situation, the cap situation, and how are they going to handle it? And in theory, the defense gave up 48 points last night if you're a box score watcher, but the 21 of the Browns' points came either through the Steelers' offense, with the first play giving them 7, or with drives starting in Pittsburgh territory. That's very tough to compete against for anybody, and the Steelers did everything they could to lose. And my last few thoughts are Cleveland, enjoy this week and the next few days, because Kansas City on Sunday will not be an easy game, and that's for sure. And Pittsburgh, this may be the start of a rough couple years in the post-Ben era. Ben isn't the same player he once was, and that is clear. Obviously, the injuries they had didn't help last night, but essentially spotting the Browns 21 would make a win last night difficult for anybody. Their offense in the first half was woeful, and it proved to be the deciding factor. Now, with that being said, that's all I have for today's video. I hope you enjoyed. If you did and are still watching, I appreciate the time out of your day. Make sure to follow me on Twitter if you enjoy the content, or just DM me if you ever want to talk football. I'll see you guys next time. Please like and subscribe. It helps a ton. Love you guys. Deuces. Peace.